The Battle of Stalingrad, known as one of the pivotal actions of World War II, was also the deadliest battle in the history of warfare.
If you had to pick the most important battle of the Second World War, Stalingrad stands at the top.
More than 1 million lives were lost in 7 months of unrelenting fighting, and the eventual German defeat destroyed Hitler's dream of commanding a global empire.
Everybody thought that's the beginning of the end. It sent shockwaves through Germany.
For decades after the war, the battle was seen as a defining victory for a cunning Joseph Stalin, whose military strategy stalled the relentless German advance. The offensive was called Operation Barbarossa, the largest invasion in history. Over 4 million Axis soldiers poured into Soviet territory. Operation Blue was intended to encircle and destroy the entire Red Army in southern Russia. That task fell upon German Army Group South. Hitler divided South into 2 armies. Army Group A was ordered to seize the Caucasus oil fields, after Army Group B moved eastward to secure the Volga River. The drive to the Volga would be led by the German 6th Army, which Hitler had declared could storm the heavens. The build-up to Operation Blue was massive. In the spring of 1942, 68 divisions, 3,000 tanks, and the largest air force of its day began assembling in southern Ukraine. One of the men who deployed outside the city of Kharkov was 6th Army Lieutenant Viggen Vuster. He had fought on the Western Front and was confident that the Nazis would be victorious.
As we had unloaded and marched into the city, the German soldiers said, "Don't be so proud, don't boast so much. Within a few days, you will be much quieter."
Vuster's fellow soldiers were right. The Eastern Front would not fall as easily as the West. Operation Blue was proceeding as planned, and what was left of Stalin's Red Army was being pushed steadily eastward. By early July, a jubilant Adolf Hitler proclaimed, "The Russian is finished." Anticipating the impending collapse of the Soviet Union, Hitler modified Operation Blue. First, he ordered the 6th Army to seize Stalin's namesake, the city of Stalingrad. The rest of Army Group B was split off to take the Caucasus, while a major portion of Army Group A was sent north to attack Leningrad. Hitler's confidence was premature.
And next day, Germans start this offensive on the both sides. They encircle 500,000 of the soldiers, and they lost everything.
To the south, Stalin's offensive on the Crimea Peninsula also ended in disaster. The Red Army attack was no match for Nazi General Erich von Manstein. Von Manstein was a hero in Germany for his work in the West. He was the commander of the 11th Army, which had steamrolled across France in a matter of weeks. He had little trouble repelling the Russian attack. On September 13th, 1942, the 6th Army finally attacked in force. The battle for the city was on.
In essence, Stalingrad becomes a giant meat grinder, into which 6th Army initially commits 1/3 of its force, early September. By late November, it'll in fact commit its entire army.
And they fought against everything, in each basement, in each flat, in the apartment buildings. And you can have on one stage it was Germans, then Soviets, then Germans, then Soviets.
The Soviets were holding on, just playing for time. Because north and south of the city, Red Army reinforcements were preparing to launch another major attack.
The Germans are trying against time, fighting Soviet will to squeeze out, destroy those final Soviet pockets of resistance. They will never do so because on the morning of 19 November, German troops in the city of Stalingrad can now hear distant guns to the northwest and to the south. Those guns are announcing the opening of a Soviet counteroffensive.
Operation Uranus was the Soviet effort to close the gap, to conduct two massive pincers, one from the north and one to the south. The Soviets had done their intelligence. They knew where the German lines were weak, and they penetrated.
More than 1 million Red Army soldiers converged on the German troops. 3 days later, the Soviet pincers closed near the city of Kulach, trapping over 270,000 men. For the Germans, one hope remained. The High Command turned to Field Marshal von Manstein, whom Hitler had previously sent north to Leningrad. Now he was asked to head back south and scrape together a rescue operation. On the morning of December 12th, the 6th Army heard the distant sounds of battle as von Manstein's men approached. But the field marshal, whose battle plan had conquered most of Western Europe, could not break through the Soviet ring. As the guns of von Manstein's relief force faded into silence, reality set in for the encircled 6th Army. The Soviets began their final assault with the largest artillery barrage in history. The Germans were on their last legs. Paulus defied his Führer and walked into captivity. The battle for Stalingrad was effectively over. 1,000 miles away in Germany, the unthinkable news that the fabled 6th Army had fallen sent shockwaves through the country.
Throughout Germany, once news of the defeat at Stalingrad was announced to the German people, the hundreds of thousands of German families that had soldiers engaged in the battle, they knew what that meant. They knew that they had lost their son, they had lost their husband, that he was not coming home, in a way that no other battle or campaign had touched all of Germany at once on such a vast scale.
The battle for Stalingrad lasted more than 7 months. It resulted in more than 750,000 Soviet casualties and more than 850,000 from the Axis lines. Of the 500,000 civilians who had once populated the city, only 1,500 remained. It was the winter of 1943, and while victory in Europe would not be official for more than 2 years, the inexorable German slide into defeat had begun. The Soviets defended Stalingrad, and within 26 months, put Berlin under siege. The D-Day invasion turned the tide in the West. But if the Soviets had not turned the Nazis back at Stalingrad, the war might have reached a very different end.
The impact of the Battle of Stalingrad on the course and outcome of World War II, and in particular the Soviet-German portion of the war, is fundamental. It is fundamental because the Battle of Stalingrad clearly indicated to all involved that Germany was going to lose the war.